Hello, hello. The technology that we have, I am speaking with Matthew Jordan Smith, who is currently experiencing nighttime in Tokyo. And my name is Joe McNally, and I'm here at home, and it's early in the morning. So, Matthew, it's so good to see your wonderful face this morning. And it's a privilege, really, to sit and talk photography with you. We've both been involved with a camera for so long.
So long. Joe, it's so great to be here with you and to start my year off this way also is just fantastic. Happy New Year, as they say in Japan. Akimashite omedetou gozaimasu. Um, it's just good being here and talking to you here as you're in New York and I'm in Japan. Kind of cool.
It is cool. It is cool. And speaking of cool, we won't get dive in immediately, but it's part of the title of the book, Aretha Cool, which is a big part of the reason you and I are talking. And it's wonderful too to see the images of Aretha behind you right now as well.
Yes,
And
yes, yes.
so lovely. And this is, the way Matthew and I will talk this morning really speaks to the heart of the matter for I think both of us in the sense that being a photographer is f-stops and shutter speeds and where do you put the light, but it's also about deeply held personal relationships.
Massively.
You know, I mean, getting invited back, becoming part of someone's family or circle is certainly is about photographic skill. You have to shoot well, but it is also so much about being a human being.
Even more so, more than anything, getting asked back is you making that connection, person to person, not about, lights, camera, action, none of that. It's you connecting with the person, person to person.
And that's what really strikes me about your relationship with Aretha, and in fact any number of celebrities you've photographed over the years, and is that she treated you like family.
Yes.
And as you have said, she would say whatever she thought, you know, and uh, and that's a tough thing to do because the world of celebrity photography is so involved with publicists and a certain array of defense mechanisms, if you will,
Yeah.
that big time names put up, understandably, to make sure that the only people they allow through the gate are people who, frankly, they can use because they want to get their word out. They can want to publicize a movie, et cetera. They're on the talk shows, they're on the covers of magazines, et cetera. Um, but you went historically throughout your career, you have gone way beyond that in terms of your relationship with people, Oprah, Tyra. We have a few images that we'll talk about. And I guess I should also mention just that there's anybody tuning in who might be like, okay, what's Matthew done? Matthew is not only a dear friend and a fellow Nikon ambassador, but he's one of the most prominent, definitive fashion, beauty, celebrity photographers of our era. And I've always admired his work. And in fact, so much so that just a small story, which I've mentioned to you before, I was on stage in Vegas for Nikon and I was about to do a beauty portrait. And Matthew was in the audience. And I announced to the audience, I said, look, I'm very nervous right now because the king of beauty is in my audience, Matthew Jordan Smith. And I'm going to try a celebrity portrait, or a fashion beauty portrait, if you will. So, so we go back a ways, you and I.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. I remember that day. And please, I'm always like in awe to see you and see your work and see how you master a crowd, all of that. I'm still trying to learn from you.
And that's an important thing because we have probably I'm older than you are, but if we put our experience together, maybe we're looking at 70 years behind the camera,
That's
easy,
true.
somewhere's in there.
Easily.
And we're still both learning. We're still both attuned to the idea that the next picture will be our best. The next level is what we strive for. So
How we shine.
but let's get into it. I'm going to share my screen and let's go from there. So everybody should be seeing maybe a small Matthew and a small Joe, but a large screen that is a graphic that has the cover of the book. And I must say, Matthew, that portrait of you that's up there, that black and white, man, that's pretty badass. You know, you know, put a leather jacket and give you a pistol or something. You're like a, badass detective on the streets of New York or something in a movie, you know.
Thank you, thank
This
you.
excellent portrait, you
I
know.
got lucky that day. I'm not good in front of the camera, but that day I've got lucky.
Yes, our I think all photographers sort of own up to the fact that their place is behind the lens, you know. But before we go any further, though, what I'll do here, just to quickly, get a little housekeeping thing out of the way, there's a QR code for Aretha Cool. It gives you all the information, where it is, how it's available, where you can buy it, learn more about Matthew and his relationship with the Queen of Soul. So, but as any journey has been, and this book is, I think, not, I won't call it a culmination because you have a lot of years left shooting, but certainly is a peak moment in your career and a defining moment in the way you have conducted yourself throughout this career of yours, in this industry, working with people, and the honorable way you have approached things. Aretha Cool is an absolute, peak moment for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. I hope I have many years ahead, but I have to like just be thankful every day I wake up, and because we no one knows what the future is. But yeah, this body of work of Aretha was personal for me for sure, a way to pay respect to somebody who I really respected, and hopefully for those who are fans of hers forever, they'll want to also own this work to have those last years of hers.
Yes, she was indeed the Queen of Soul. And let me move on here. We'll go, and Aretha Cool, an intimate portrait. Couldn't have said it any better, because there is an intimacy to the way you photographed her. And I made a note. Your publicist has written that one of the reasons Aretha embraced you so thoroughly was that you never said no to her.
You
And
don't say no to the queen.
that's exactly it, because it harks back to me to a story I heard about Clarence Clemens. And he left the E Street Band, which was his home, and to go play with Aretha. I forget if it was a gig or a tour, but he just left the E Street Band for a period of time. And his rationale was, when the Queen calls, you come.
That's right. That's
And
it.
I wish I had met her even for a minute, because she's such a talent, so formidable, in our landscape, not just of singing, but of culture.
Yes. Yes. There were days when she'd call just to talk. And then when I get off the phone, I'm like, wow, she has so much history. Like she's going through so much in her life. And when you get to know somebody that well, you kind of forget about all that stuff until you reflect on it. But Aretha was involved in so much beyond just music. Talk about, leaving a legacy. She was involved in so much. And I just love her music. I love what it means to so many people and what she means to so many people. And I feel blessed that I was able to spend time with her and capture those last 13 years of her life.
And there's a very poignant section of the book towards the end where people are holding her, some have her vinyl, and their hands are on the wall and they're writing notes to her. That was very poignant to me.
Thank
It means that she was central to so many people's lives.
Absolutely. More than we know. When I first announced the book, I got all these emails from people from all over the world, which really surprised me. wanted to know how they can get their hands on the book. And she didn't fly the latter part of her years of her life, so many people didn't get to see her. She never came to Japan, but she has a massive fan base here in Japan who
Wow.
know her music like the back of your hand. It's pretty amazing to see that.
That's yeah. And she never toured there.
Never toured here. Yeah, she went to Europe, of course, before she stopped flying, but never to Japan.
Wow. Well, let's go back. Let's flip backwards a little bit. And to me, Tyra, this portrait of Tyra, and being a photographer, I know the telling aspects of a ring flash and all of that, but this to me is one of the definitive beauty portraits of all time. So, would you regard this as like a moment behind the camera where you just said, okay, I'm really on my way?
This is actually definitely one of those moments for me. This is the moment when I felt like, oh, maybe I can get a career as a photographer. I felt that this is one of those days where you're just photographing your friend and you happen to make magic. Um, she was popular at this point, but not really like a big star. She was on her way up. And for this shoot, there's only three of us in the studio. It was myself, Tyra, and the makeup artist, Sam Fine. Just the three of us hanging out, shooting ideas. And I'm like, you know what? I just want to get just you, this shoulder. She had on a tube top this day and jeans, and her hair's pulled back in like a bun. I'm like, you're not going to see the hair at all. It's going to disappear. And she got it, and Sam got the idea, and we went to work, and this just happened. And the moment it happened, like, wow, this is a special shot. But even then, I didn't know how special it would become. But it was definitely one of those pictures that I guess got me a lot of attention at the start of my career.
And let's for folks who don't know, maybe talk a little bit about the start of your career and
Yes.
how you came up photographically, geographically, where was that start, et cetera. Maybe just kind of fill some folks in.
Well, I was born in Brooklyn, New York, but moved down to the South, to South Carolina when I was 7. And my father, as a way to get me out of my shyness going from New York to the South, turned me on to photography. It became this thing that I played around with for a while. And then as I got older, he gave me my own camera, taught me how to process my own film, turned the bathroom into a makeshift dark room. And I was hooked at that point. Went to art school in Atlanta, left art school early, and moved back to New York to work as a photo assistant. That was my real training. Working in New York for fashion photographers like Neil Barr and portrait photographers like Gregory Heisler and just a lot of great people. That was my beginning. And then from assisting, working as a photo assistant, I graduated, if you will, into working for myself. So started shooting like the early 90s. And this shot was done in like 94, 95 when I shot this picture of Tyra. So the early days of just shooting. And as a matter of fact, I was assisting, shooting until I couldn't assist anymore and just started to shoot. But this day happened. It was just Tyra, I, and the makeup artist, and it was the beginning of a great friendship with me and Tyra and Sam Fine to this day.
It's a time honored way that you came up. That is, I guess, success photographically right here, right now, and in our uh, time frame that we are working in. Lots of different ways to go about, launching a career. Social media, following followers, etc. But what you have just mentioned is, or was anyway, the time honored approach to this industry. It was an apprenticeship,
Absolutely.
you know, and that's another crossover point for you and I, in that Greg Heisler is a very dear friend, and um, I was growing up, you know, crazy, eager in New York, in the 80s, trying to shoot. And I literally had photo editors look at me on occasion and say, give me something that has like color, like Heisler does, because he was so formative. He literally changed the color palette of magazines and the way they approach. And Greg is just extraordinary.
Yes, he is. My first Christmas in New York, I had Christmas dinner with Greg Heisler, Mary Ellen Mark, and Jay Mizell. And I'm sitting there like, oh my goodness, I'm around by these three incredible photographers and just soaking up everything. And I'll never forget that. That was my, I guess, baptism into like this whole crazy, wonderful world of photography.
Man, that dinner, that's like a huge Christmas present in and of itself.
It was, it
I would have
was.
waited on that table just to listen, you know, man, because I knew Mary Ellen and obviously, know Jay. And Jay to me is still, he's kind of the father of modern color photography.
Yes, yes, he is. Yes, he
So,
is.
but that is a path, a lot of us took. And that is a classic path to skills that lead you to doing work like this. I mean, Samuel L. You know, I mean, when he was younger, if you could talk about this picture, obviously he's a younger guy. Did
Yes,
you think, or did he think that he would become not only the actor he's become, but the cultural icon, the, the the coolest guy on the planet, the guy every other guy wants to be, you know?
exactly. Exactly. It's funny looking back at this picture. I remember this day so well. This is late 90s and is my first time meeting Sam Jackson. Started my career, I shot mostly women, but I started getting men, and he was one of the first men that I shot. And I remember this day he walks in the studio and he's saying, "Oh, I hate taking pictures." And I stopped and I said, "Well, how can you hate taking pictures? You're in every movie that's ever been made." And this was back then. He's still in every movie. But he's like, "Well, taking shooting a movie, you're saying your lines, you're playing a character, you're never looking into the camera." He's like, "But when I'm taking pictures, I feel almost naked because I've got to stare into the camera. I don't know what to do." I'm like, "Well, let me take your picture and I'll direct you. But I just want to say, I'll say the name of a movie and you play the character in that movie." So we went this whole game of saying these different movies, and he go into this different character visually. It became this game, and this is how we got this image. This is it. This is like, oh, give me the Pulp Fiction face, and that's how this happened. But that day was like also a bonding. Where it's my first time meeting him, first time connecting, and even now when I see him, we talk and joke about that day, that first day shooting.
That's it. You bring up a very interesting point that anybody who's photographed movie stars um, has, I'm sure, encountered this. They do feel kind of defenseless in front of a still camera because that moment
Yes.
is going to be preserved forever. And they can't dialogue,
No,
there's no music, there's no action, you know, uh,
there's no
you know,
crew.
yeah, exactly. So they are like facing off with this eye, this camera lens that is going to preserve this moment forever. And I think what you just said was brilliant, just to give even somebody who's used to being in the public eye, give him something else to think about, something to motivate him.
It's a fun day. It's a fun day. I saw him about 6 months ago, and it's just wild to think, where he's come since then. I photographed him 3 or 4 times since then. I also interviewed him for my first book, and just to see his career has been pretty amazing to watch.
And we'll talk about our previous books, Sepia Dreams,
Yes,
as being a conduit, or we don't have to get into it right now, but one of the first things Aretha said to you was about Sepia Dreams was a challenge to you. Is why am I not in this book?
absolutely. My very first shoot with Aretha, that's what she told me. I gave her that book, my first book, as a gift at the end of the shoot. And she's going through it and she's seeing all these celebrities. There's like 50 celebrities in the book and interviews. And the first thing she said is, "Why am I not in this book?" And when I thought about it, I'm like, wow, here I am photographing Aretha Franklin, showing her a book of celebrities, and she's not in the book. And rightfully so, she said, like, why am I not here? And I'm like, you know what? That was a big mistake on my point. I'll make sure I fix that, and you'll be in my future book.
Yeah, yeah, that kind of, it's like one of those things like, oops,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
It was definitely an oops moment. And that's Aretha. She will say what's on her mind. She's like, mm-hmm, these are nice pictures, but I'm the queen. Where am I?
Exactly. Which also might have led to that moment that you describe in the book. Well, first of all, she calls you Jordan. She doesn't call you Matthew,
Yes.
which
She
I
never
find
called me Matthew, always Jordan.
very endearing. But then you decided, I mean, it's pretty ballsy on your part, Matthew. You started to sing with her. When she was singing, I guess this is the story. You just started to sing along, and she was like, Jordan, don't sing.
Right, right. Well, I must say, by the time that happened, I'd known her for a while. We were very comfortable. She was calling me directly for bookings, and this day I was just so comfortable. I learned on that first shoot that she only liked hearing her music. So I put together this list of music that I played every time I photographed her, always the same songs, but it was my favorite Aretha Franklin songs. And one day, we're shooting and I'm like 5 feet from her, and the whole room is lost in the music. Like everybody, my assistants, the hair, the makeup, her crew, her bodyguards, everybody's just quiet and lost in that song. And before I know it, she starts to hum and then she starts to sing along. And I'm getting goosebumps as she's singing right in front of me. And it's like one of my favorite songs. And before I knew it, I started singing as well. I didn't plan to. I just started singing, lost in the moment, dumb of me. And then she stops and corrects me. She's like, "Oh, wait, 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 Jordan, baby, don't sing." And the whole room is quiet for like an instant. You could hear a pin drop, and then everybody's burst out laughing, including Aretha. And it's a moment that I'll never ever forget because while she's laughing, I'm embarrassed, of course, but I'm trying to shoot my way through the moment and capture all that stuff. But I love those images of her laughing after, the moment she calls me out. And I don't know what I was thinking about trying to sing anyway, but it was just a moment I'll never forget.
Such a wonderful story. And and speaking of wonderful, Oprah.
Oprah, Oprah, another icon. This is also a big moment in my career. This is not the first time I shot her. This is years later. This is like probably mid 2000s, 2010, 11. But I shot her the first time 95, 96. And then to watch her change throughout that time also has been pretty amazing to see her come from, being icon of icons to being superstar to being, there's nobody like Oprah. To photograph her was definitely a big moment at the start of my career. One of the first big covers I ever did was Oprah. I think there was a three that year that I did that was really big, and she was the one that like really opened the door for me photographically.
Your publicist pitched you to Aretha saying that you had shot more beautiful covers of Essence.
Yes.
Do you know how many covers you shot? Do you have that number in your head?
Oh, I don't have the number in my head off the top, but during the 90s, I'd shot more covers for the magazine than any other photographer at that time. Um, so I became like the cover man of the 90s for Essence. And she was one of them who I shot for Essence. My first cover for Oprah was of Essence. I shot for many covers, but the first one was an Essence cover,
Wow.
and it started everything, back in the day.
Well, here you are too. Now, all these years later, you assisted Greg Heisler. We
Yes.
mentioned him earlier. You have more covers of Essence than anyone. And Greg went on to shoot more covers of Time than anyone. So there's a pairing
Yes.
of two formidable talents.
Yes. I'm nowhere like Greg. I mean, I learned a lot working for him, and uh, my last job assisting was assisting for Greg. And I remember that shoot so well. And it was fun watching him work through shoots in the moment. And I learned a lot from him uh, that I'll never forget.
Yeah, he's, like you, he's, become familiar with a number of, people he's photographed over the years. He photographed
Yes.
a story I always love that speaks to us as photographers. Something always goes wrong. He was photographing Bruce Springsteen, and he was using typically of Greg, I don't know, some sort of 11 by 14 camera, or one of those,
Yes.
and couldn't get the flashes to fire. And they tried everything. They switched out the power packs. They switched out the heads. They, checked the electrical connections. And then finally, someone had the idea to switch out the sync cord, because it was old school, a PC cord
Right.
into the view camera,
Eight
and
by
the
10.
flashes fired. And Greg always says that Bruce looked at him and said, I've been doing this a long time. It's always the squiggly little wire.
And he's right. He's right about that.
Murphy's law, something will go wrong, is always there on a photo shoot
That's true. To this day.
to
To
this
this
day.
day.
Yep,
I mean, it's
went
different,
absolutely
but
planned. So this is an interesting collection of personalities waiting to exhale.
yes, it is.
Just
Yes, it
beautiful
is.
ladies.
All beautiful, all powerful. This is my first time meeting each and every one of them. It's funny looking at it now, but this is the author of the book is in the middle, Terry McMillan, who's a good friend to this day. On her right is Angela Bassett. On her left is Whitney Houston. And this day, this is for the movie Waiting to Exhale. It was a secret set before the movie came out, and Whitney Houston walked into the studio first on this day. And when she walked in, she looked around, she's seeing the whole crew, and I'm the only black person in the room. And she says to my assistant, "Who's the photographer?" And she points to me. And she looks at me and she's like, "Oh, that's different." And then she walks up to me and says, "Oh, where's your music?" So at the time we had CDs. So I had this whole big, gigantic book of CDs. And she goes looking through all the music. She's like, "You know what? We're going to get along just fine." And from that moment on, it changed the whole energy in the room. It became kind of like a little party, and we had a great time. And this was the last image of the shoot. Actually, the shoot had finished. We had finished on the shoot, and then I said, for the one more image before you guys go, please come together and just hug and close your eyes. It was the feeling in the room at that time that was just so incredible. So this hug was like a really great, real hug. And I cherish this moment forever. And all the craziness that happened after this was just a wonderful day. Nobody wanted to go home.
That's great. That's great. And as beautiful as their faces are, what I also love about the photograph is the intertwining of the hands.
Yes.
So much
Yes.
love and respect and comfort, and you can feel that through the photograph. You can really feel it.
You definitely can. You definitely can. Watching all of them come alive was just a wonderful day. And this Queen Latifah, Dana, uh, who has had such an amazing career, been shooting her since the 90s also. So to shoot all these people throughout the decades, it just feels so great. I just watched the movie the other day with Queen Latifah in it. And to watch her like take off throughout her career has been wonderful.
Yeah, no, she's a very formidable force, and she got that TV series on where she's, kicking butt.
Yes.
Um, and then of course the lady in question,
Yes.
you know,
The
so
queen herself.
so dignified and so powerful. Um,
I love this picture. It's one of my favorites because there's a smirk on her face. And this is Aretha's smile, which I've seen so many times. And this is when she was sick, actually. She had stopped for a while, and then she got really sick, and then she came back. This is when she came back. She lost a lot of weight. Um, but this day she had a lot of energy. And this moment, it was just like this quiet moment. We're playing music and we're talking just, normal stuff. And she just starts laughing and smirking as I'm shooting. And this is like her quiet smirk smile. And I love this picture so much because this to me is Aretha.
And just and a
Mr.
font
Gordon
of
Parks.
creativity, you know,
Mr. Parks.
Gordon was, the range of his work, and you cite him as an inspiration. I do as well. And it was one of the honors of my career to assist him one day, because the how things work at magazines, as you well know, the managing editor is the boss, right? And if the managing editor likes something, you're more than likely going to be sent to do a story about it. And my managing editor at Life at the time, Dan Okrent, was a huge jazz fan. So he set the magazine's resources out to recreate The Great Day in Harlem, originally shot by Art Kane.
Yes.
So the magazine found all the last living members at that time. This was in the late 90s. Even the kids who were sitting on the curb, who were now adults. And they assigned Gordon. And I was a staff photographer there at Life. And my boss came to me and says, I want you and your guys to assist Gordon. And I said, wow, name it, And so I actually got to watch him work. And,
Oh, wow.
and we were up on the same street, same stoop, and he was amazing at camera. And the way he commanded presence, the elegance of the man, and the visual power that he radiated, even though at that point he was an older man, but the command of the moment was still absolutely his, and I cherish that moment.
Uh,
So
I grew up reading his books, and his book was the first one that really made me feel like, oh, this can be more than just a hobby. Reading his book, the Learning Tree, it was me for the first time seeing somebody who looked like me with a camera in their hand and making a living at it. And that's when it clicked for me, thinking like, oh, I can do this as a career. So I thank Gordon for that, because without that book and that moment, that light bulb moment, I wouldn't be here.
yeah,
So I thank Gordon so much for that.
I can only imagine, really, as as a white man, what Gordon had to drill through. I mean, he was a photojournalist. He did a beautiful, poignant essay about Flavio,
Yes, yes, in Brazil. Yes.
and in Brazil, and then he also went on to shoot just beautiful fashion. And for a black photographer at that point in time to crack into the world of fashion photography, I can see where there's an affinity, because we've talked about
Yeah.
your career and how oftentimes you were
How hard
the
it is to break
only
in.
black person on the set.
Yes.
But we'll
How
cycle
hard it.
back to that in a couple of minutes. Because here's the final picture I put up. You're in Japan now, and
Yes.
you just sent me this, and I'm like, yeah, that is a very serene and beautiful photograph. And you had said that you were, after you came back from the States, you were going to go up to Mount Fuji and just, I don't know, spend some time staring at the sky and the mountain.
Yes. It's a mystical, beautiful mountain, and it does give me peace whenever I'm there. You never know what you're going to get because this mountain makes its own weather, literally. it can be a totally clear blue sky, but right by the mountain, there's just clouds hanging there. So you never know if you'll get the full mountain clear. And I went for like 6 days this past week, and three of them I got great weather, and three other days is just clouds everywhere. But it's such a beautiful mountain to photograph, and something about it just gives me peace.
I'm going to stop sharing here. So it goes back to the two of us. And wow, I gotta say, Matthew, I love the conversation we just had. I absolutely loved it.
Thank you, man. I love talking to you, period, all the time. So
Well, I miss you, and that sort of cycles me back to a, you know, I guess you could call it a tough place. Your wife is Japanese.
yes,
You are located. You live now in Japan, and you've told me that you feel more comfortable in Japan as a black man than you do in your own country.
very true.
Can we talk?
Yes. I mean, sad to say, but it's very true. Um, Now I go back and forth to the States a lot, now about 4 or 5 times a year. So I get to see that the difference from the moment I land to when I get back here. And it is still very, very different. Um, Now I've been living here 8 years, and as a photographer, most of my career has been in the States, of course. And I always felt there was like a ceiling. I could only get but so high, and only photographing, for the most part, black celebrities. I mean, there's been a few here and there where it's not that way, but for the most part, people would look at me and say, "Oh, he can just photograph black people." And coming to Japan, I don't get that. There isn't that mentality at all, and it feels there's a freedom that I never had living in the States, and it's it's wonderful to experience. It's for the first time. It's like a real freedom to be here and be seen as just a creative person, a photographer. Um,
Yeah.
I hope that can change one day, but that's how I feel. That's been my experience.
Yeah, I hope so too, because as I said, you know, I miss you. I think the creative input, the energy that you have, and also the stories. I mean, that you can tell, the way you have approached people. I mean, just referencing the Aretha book, one of the reasons she loved you so much was you were I think, the only one who sent her yellow roses.
That's correct.
And um, and just to know that sort of like inside baseball kind of story for a photographer's life, that the way you approach people and the decency that you have, that's expressed through your camera. The other thing that I've always loved and about your work, and I think again we share this collectively with most photographers, no matter how much we work and get a cover or a story or a this or that, the pictures that remain most important to us are the personal pictures, the ones that are not in the limelight. And I was always struck by the beautiful portraiture you did of your mom and dad. And you know, my dad passed a long, long time ago, before I was a photographer. And I kind of look at your pictures of your dad, and obviously they're heartfelt, but there's also your level of expertise that also brings that picture to life. And I was not a photographer when I lost my dad. And I think back on that and say, oh, I wish I had a couple of good pictures of him. And so those pictures to me, I mean, I don't know if you could just talk about that kind of the power of that emotion.
I definitely can. My father and my mother, they are both instrumental in me really following my dream to be a photographer, encouraging me, even though they had fear at first about me doing this as a career. but they also allowed me to photograph them all my life the moment I got a camera in my hand.
Wow.
Um, and when I was younger, I took it for granted. I didn't think about, oh, I should shoot my family. But as I got older, and started working as an assistant, I'd go home, see my parents, photograph them, my sisters photograph them, and it became a thing. Whenever I came home, I'd photograph everybody. And the last pictures of my father are my favorite because he was showing the first signs of Alzheimer's, and I pulled him outside, and I just said, just looked right into the camera, and he's looking through the camera almost, and he's there but not there. But there's an instant where I felt like I got him while he was there, and that picture means so much to me. And anybody who's dealt with any family member going through Alzheimer's, you know, they come and go. And in that picture, my father was there, and I love that picture so much. My mother, she died from cancer a year ago on December 30th. And the pictures of my mother, they're there's this those pictures are so powerful. They're so personal. Um, Toward the end of my father's life and my mother's life, I started using my phone as a timepiece. As a matter of fact, I'll show you exactly what I did. With my father, I had a clock, but with my well, I turned my phone off. I would turn on my phone and have it give me the date, the time, all the information of the moment down to the second, and have it right by them so I could freeze that moment in time visually. And I love those pictures. I love those pictures. I have those moments until the end of both my parents. And to be honest, some of those pictures I still can't look at yet, but I know one day I will be able to. And photography for me is not only a way to express myself, but also a way to document my life and my family's life here on earth. It's a powerful tool.
I've always said that pictures are our footprints. They're
Yeah.
proof that we were here. And in
Proof
fact,
that
too,
we
I
were
mean,
here.
it mingles with your professional life because am I getting this right? Um, did you say that you see your sister in Aretha? Or there?
Yes, yes. My younger sister, I lost three family members in 3 years.
Hmm.
My younger sister first, then my father, then my mother. And my younger sister, the first time I photographed Aretha, I'm going to flying to Detroit. Um, and when I meet her in person, something just felt so familiar. And I'm shooting film at the time. I'm looking down at my RZ 67. I'm looking down at the camera and I see my sister. I'm like, oh my gosh, she looks like Donna. And then over the years, as I get to know Aretha, her mannerisms, my sister's manner, they was the same. And I told my older sister this after my sister passed away, and she's looking at the pictures of Aretha, and she's like, "Oh, I see it now." I'm like, "Yeah, there." It felt like there was a real connection beyond just. It just felt powerful and strong, and she felt like a family member, and in many ways, she was.
Yeah. Yeah, the life of a photographer, our personal lives sort of, it's like, you know, water at the shore or something. When our professional lives, it all mixes together. It's like this tidal influence that the way we see the world, the way we see our family, etc.
That's so true. Yeah, I tell you, toward the end of Aretha's life, we were trying to do a shoot before she passed away. And at the end, I want to get a shot of her the way I shot of my father. This is before he was really sick. but I got the idea first, wanted to do this image with Aretha. I wanted to shoot a picture of her with a mirror to get her reflection. And I wanted to get a picture of her also holding a timepiece like this, just to show the date and time and lock in that picture with her. Never got to do that picture because she never made it. Um, we were talking a lot before she passed, but we never got to do that last shoot, sadly. And I wish we had. I wish we had.
But you have the book now. It's a monumental effort. Um, and it's a memoir, it's an emotional tone poem, really, to one of America's greatest artists. And you were
Yes.
there in her life as a not just as a photographer, but as a friend. And that difference, you know, as we mentioned earlier, to go from photographer to friend to family, and then it circles back and influences the pictures that you make, because there's an intimacy there that is lacking in your standard celebrity shoot. Let's put it that way.
Definitely. Definitely.
Let me share my screen again, and we'll start to close here. But I'll there's Mount Fuji again, but I'll escape out of that, and I'll put back up a graphic here that shows the book. There's the limited edition, and then of course there is the book itself. Amazon and booksellers all across the board.
Yes, there's two versions of the book. This is the standard edition that you have here,
Mhm.
and then there's 100 limited edition versions, which is like a book set, where it has the book, it has special features in it, has a signed print in the book. Um, there are again only 100 copies. Actually, today there are about 39 copies left of the limited edition still out there.
Mm.
And these are special. Each one is numbered, signed. Each special part of the book set is also signed and numbered as well. Oh, and you have one in your hand.
Let me see, let me stop the share. I've got 094.
You have number 94.
Yep. Yep.
Wow.
Have, in the limited edition, I also have your signed image,
Signed print.
and there's a USB stick in there as well, and a certificate of authenticity. And it's one of the things that I treasure. And also, Matthew, it's one of the things we recently had a Nikon ambassador meeting. It's one of the things I'm kicking myself about. I didn't bring the book to Melville. So that's on the agenda the next time we see each other.
I'll be back in New York soon, hopefully, and I'll come over to your place and sign your book or anything. Oh, your book's already signed, but I want to sign more for you. So,
Yes, I want to like it. I want to actually have you sign it while I make a picture of you signing it. I mean,
oh, that'd be
that's how magic we
fantastic.
get, right?
That'd be fantastic.
Well, Matthew, my dear friend, this has been just a lovely conversation and a great way to start the year.
Thank you so much. It's the best way to start the year. Thank you so much. In Japan, the first like 6 days are kind of like quiet days, people with family. So nothing's really going on yet here, but that will be changing next week again. Once we start the 6th, 7th, will come alive again and start back to hustle and bustle. But it's so great to start the year with you and just to see a smiling face and just talk shop. Thank you so much for having me on and letting me just share the joy of photography and a little bit of my career.
Well, same back to you. It's a career that's extraordinary and influenced so many people. So
Thank you.
happy to have this talk. There's an oral history that photographers everybody talks about our pictures, but there's that oral history of the
Yes,
stories behind the pictures that's very important.
it really is. It
So
truly, truly is. I love this industry. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard, but the ups and downs, no matter what, I love what it's done for me, and my life has given me a way to express myself in ways that I can't, verbally. I love that about being a photographer.
Well, my friend, let's hope for a wonderful 25
Yes.
and
Yes.
to see each other more than once or twice, more frequently.
Definitely. Definitely. More frequently indeed. Please travel safely. I know you're going to do some traveling very soon, so travel safely. And I'll see you sometime soon back in the States.
That sounds great. Everybody who is watching, please thank you for watching. And once again, Matthew Jordan Smith and his monumental effort, Aretha Cool.